Hello, hello, hello. And this week on Mind Your Business, we are shifting gears today from business credit. I normally come in and I talk about business credit every week. And so we're going shifting gears from business credit to something even more valuable, and that's fatherhood. So last week was Father's Day. And while the holiday was uh, past last week, the meaning of being a father lasts far beyond a single day. And, I got a chance to spend it with my daughter in Baltimore and my grandkids and everything. Yes, I have some grandkids. And my daughter's here today from South Carolina. She took a break. Oh, she got here yesterday. And so my daughter Samiyah is here. And again, like I said, joined by someone incredible, incredibly special. It's again my youngest daughter, Samiyah. And so we're gonna kind of have this candid conversation. I just want to kind of talk about, where I want to start off with you, kind of going from dominating the basketball court in high school and helping lead your team to a state championship, and to now navigating college sports, really in adulthood. So she's really stepping into the next quarter of her life, and as her father, I just want to share the kind of guidance that really doesn't show up usually in a textbook, but in real, raw, and loving conversations. So this is a conversation between dad and his daughter. I actually did tell my other daughter that I was going to be doing this with Samia, and hopefully we'll get her to call in a few minutes later and talk about that as well. But this episode is really for every father out there. Again, I know it's a late Father's Day thing, but this is for episodes for every father who's kind of raising queen, and for every daughter walking boldly into their future. So also want to say, actually, we're actually not going to be live on this one. I think we were going to be live, but uh, anyway, I want to kind of talk about, and this is the interesting conversation, but I do want to kind of talk about actually love, legacy, and the life after 20. So we're going to kind of break this up, Samia, into four quarters. And you know what I'm saying, Samia? We're going to talk about legacy and lessons from childhood at the beginning. So again, first, Samia, welcome to the Mind Your Business podcast with your dad, the host, Max Fortune. How about that?
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
You happy to be here?
Yes.
I know it's kind of been a long day for you, and I apologize for that. But yeah, things happen. We had to work, trying to get everything going. But how are you feeling right now?
Feeling good.
Feeling good?
Yes. Always wanted to be on my podcast. My dad knows that. So yeah, this is gonna be nice.
Okay, so we're
Nice
gonna
first experience.
yes, yes, yes. Um, so again, I want to kind of talk about like again, I kind of have this kind of semi-segmented. This is really a little informal, kind of thing, and so we're gonna kind of break it up into four quarters, kind of like a basketball game. So
Okay.
first quarter, we're gonna talk about legacy and lessons from childhood. So my what I want to ask you about, and so what are some of the values or habits that you kind of think you picked up from our time kind of together and growing up? So what would you say are some of those values? And I didn't prompt her, everybody, so I don't know what she's gonna say. I have no idea what
Some values that I've picked up.
that you were taught. I should say that's probably a better thing, because hopefully you
Mm,
weren't just picking up stuff from just everywhere.
Definitely like it's in my nature, but obviously treating, people the way you want to be treated. Like I always give my um kindest self, like with introducing myself to people and just like getting to know people. um I would say like believing in yourself, myself, especially like putting my foot forward to at least gain opportunities that might not have came if I didn't, reach out for them. um More core values would be like just respect, like having respect for just my elders, my parents, of course, and yeah, just being a good kid. I don't really, I mean, it's kind of like broad, like it's so many things I could say, and I'm just trying to keep it like more narrow, but those like it's kind of a broad question, so I guess yeah.
You know what? I'm going to say that you kind of had, a unique but not unique, I guess, situation. You kind of grew up in sports, in gyms, And you know what? I kind of want to give a quick shout out to the your early coaches. You know, your Coach Barry and Coach Alex and some of the coaches that helped you with AAU, Coach George. You know, those guys set. They were also part of your foundation too. You know, as far as the discipline and some of those things. You know, so talk about some of that. How the like how basketball or how sports kind of shaped some of your discipline. You know.
Sports definitely like kind of was my alt like became my alter ego. Like in person, I'm more so like reserved and like quiet, but when I touch the court, it's like I really get to just be my full self, my energetic self, my tenacious self, that I just don't have to think when I play basketball. It's just and like it's just natural. So to my coaches, I would say like they've definitely brought out that confidence in me because when I first started that,
Yeah.
I was just dancing on the courts and I didn't really have the respect that I have now
Yeah.
on the court.
You were 8 years old when you started. So.
Well, no, but I'm saying like, as the years progressed, I feel like I still wasn't getting, minutes or that I deserved at the time because I was still also just finding myself like who I was. Like I didn't know I was going to be a point guard then,
Yeah.
but it's just like they've instilled just me being a natural leader. I was literally the perfect role for that, and they just really helped me step into that. I would
Mhm.
say. Um, I remember Coach Sam would be like, they didn't see your pass or you threw the ball and they got hit with it, but that was still a good pass and they need to know that they need to be ready at all times. So just definitely helped me navigate who I was on the court, who I was in like actual life, and instilled that confidence in me.
And you know what I'm gonna say through that process, and it's funny. It's funny that I still watch games from then. Like you know, so I don't know, but and my daughter will never say this, and the thing that you've had such an incredible career that most people have, um, as far as what you did even in high school is just unheard of to go through your whole high school career only losing two games, and one was to a private school and the other one was to a the state champions from the people who won the state champions, and he went all the way, so 4 years almost undefeated, and getting there, and then your final year getting that state championship, and just all of that hard work and everything. um and you know what, that was enjoyable for me, to be honest with you. And in a weird way, um going through that experience, or just watching you and filming you through all those games, you probably don't even remember how many games. I've recorded over 400 games that you've played in since you were 8 years old, and I got them all on tape, all but I think nine. Other than with college, the college stuff I didn't really
Yeah.
get as much. But up until that point, I only missed maybe 9 or 10 games at most 10. But I got 400 of them on camera. And so as you progressed, I had to progress with what I was. I think I had a little one of those mini cameras initially, and you were getting down the court too fast, and the camera lens couldn't even zoom in fast enough to get it down there. So I had to step up that, and I just eventually had a full gear. Um, but that whole process was good. And speaking of that, kind of like if there's is there any kind of moment that you would say from your basketball career, as we're talking about this first quarter, that shaped you as a person, not just an athlete?
Can you repeat the first part of the
So
question?
I don't want this to be it seems like
I
it's
know,
like
I
an
just
interview,
didn't.
but
I
it's like
literally just didn't hear
I
you.
just want to know if there's any moment from your from the time that you played, so from 8 until, I mean, you're 20 now, so over those 12 years, is there any moment that you kind of can think of that kind of shaped you as a person, not just as an athlete? And I mean, I can think of so many moments, that so many.
I was gonna say I can't really
Yeah,
say one specific moment. I would just say like over time. Um, I don't know, just I've team hopped plenty of times, like gone to
yeah.
played with different age groups and been with different teams. So it's like I would say
How's that kind of shaped you as a person?
it's definitely made me stronger. I feel like I didn't know fully what I was capable of at those different levels or with certain people, and so I feel like the connections
Who
I've
pushed
made.
you? Who pushed you through all of that? Who pushed?
Okay. But it's like, yeah, like it just shaped me into like just really who I was. I feel like ultimately, um, I would have found that, but it's just like it helped make things go faster, and I kind of really just learned my identity on the court more so than anything. Um, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So, um, if you could describe, as we're ending the first quarter, if you could describe your childhood in one word or phrase, what would that be and why? Like one word or phrase.
Mm, energetic.
Energetic.
That's my word.
Okay.
I just had a lot of energy as a kid, like a lot of energy. So basketball was good for that. Sports in general was good for that. Yeah, because I mean, I was a child, so I didn't really have anything, like. But yeah, I had energy and I knew how to put it into, good things. I've always been in like an outdoor kid, not an iPad kid. So definitely use the energy to, do things productive for the most part growing up.
Okay. That's great. Ready to go in the second quarter.
It's good.
Okay, this is the hope not the tough part for me, but it's about love, dating, and relationships. And you know what? It's funny we're going to talk about this part now because we kind of last night when I picked you up from the airport, we kind of had a little bit of conversation about some things, and it's always interesting talking to your your daughter,
Told
especially
you
your
that
youngest daughter.
you're awkward.
So I'm just saying, it's just it's awkward.
I mean,
It is awkward
it's
for a
not
dad to
really,
be
but
talking to his
not really.
kid about relationships and stuff like
Not
that. It
really.
just, huh?
Okay.
It is a bit, yeah. So uh you know what, I kind of want to start with, and then again I'm gonna just ask you some uh candid questions. And so if there's something, or let me ask you, like, what's something about relationships you think daughters should hear directly from their fathers?
Um,
And you know what, we do have a caller. I asked Bria to call in. I don't know if this is going to be her or not. I hope it is, but I don't have caller ID on this thing. So let's answer this call. Hello, caller. You are on live at the Mind Your Business Max Fortune Fatherhood Show. What's your name and where you're from? I always want to say that. You know what? Hold on. Hold the phone. Let me just make sure that this is hold on a second. Making sure. Okay, BT. Okay, yep. How about now, caller? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh my
no.
gosh. Okay. This is my
Yo, it's me, pumpkin. Ew, I've never called you that. That didn't even sound right. I didn't like that at all.
all right, everybody. So this is my daughter Jabria, who's just calling in, and y- oh wow, okay, and my grandsons, obviously. Bria, you're on a call. You're, you know, yes, please. You're on a call, actual live call. Well, not that authentic. that's that's too real. Okay. Put them in timeout. I don't think it's really been a timeout. Do a Cullen. Get some push-ups. Do some push-ups. And you know what, Bria, you kind of calling it a good time. Well, you kind of calling it a good time because we're kind of um I was shaping this around like four quarters. And we kind of started off, and before we go into Samia, so before we kind of dive into this part, it's actually Samia, it's great that Jabria is kind of calling in at this time. So, Bria, before we kind of go into the second quarter, I kind of want to go back and just ask you some things. And so, Uh, you know what? I think well, I got two questions for you. One's gonna segue into the second part that we just started, but I want you to I want to say if you could yeah, how about you? Well, I'll start 2 seconds really quickly. If you can get us like some of the values that you think you kind of got growing up in the household with your father. Some of the values or habits that you picked up.
Like from you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm your dad, right? I'm your father. Huh? No, this is kind of like we're talking about father-daughter advice. So this is from your dad.
From Double Up.
Oh my. Bria, come on. Let's be serious, okay? I put all that behind me.
Oh my gosh.
Come on. This is all right. Let's be for real. Okay.
One that I hold near here is the whole concept of the gift. I feel like it was one of the big staples in my childhood that like imparted on me, just letting me know that I had the gift and I could accomplish anything that I put my mind to. It is something that I wholeheartedly believe in to this day. So it's definitely like a confidence um, to that I appreciate that I learned.
Okay.
I'd say
Right.
that's the biggest thing. So
Okay.
many things. I mean,
Dad, right. Dad didn't tell me it was about him when
What?
I did mine. He's just said core values.
Well, I did say
That's why
that.
I
You
asked
didn't
you to repeat it,
hear.
and you just said core
Yeah,
values.
I said that you got from your father,
No,
from
Dad,
me.
I
I
promise
did.
you
I
didn't.
honestly
But
said
it's
that. We're
fine.
going to replay
So
it.
I would have, I
Come
would
on.
go back, but
I could
it
go
is what
back.
it
Go
is.
back. You can go back and
But
do a
Bree
redo.
basically said it as the gift, and then
So you can explain further. What is the gift? Bria kind of touched on it, but what is your idea of what that is?
well,
what is it now? You know, right
the
now.
gift is what how you described it is that we have the ability to do anything we put our minds to.
And go ahead, you want to elaborate more? No,
And
I would always ask you, where is the gift, and what would you say?
Dad, that's a little, I don't know.
Okay.
That's a little too far back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you always point at your heart. I would always
Oh,
tell you
okay.
it's yeah.
I figured that,
Yeah.
but it's
Okay.
like,
Well, listen. You have to be descriptive. People didn't go anyway. All right. So we're gonna. So Bria, here's what I do want to do. And I actually want to start with Samia and then come back to you on this. Okay. And it's like so. I was asking her as we're now shifting. That was kind of like the first quarter conversations of like first 10 or 15 minutes we were talking, and so we're kind of moving into like a second quarter kind of thing, which is love, dating, and relationship conversation. And so I'm asking you, Samia, now. This is for you, okay? What's something about relationships that you think daughters should hear directly from their fathers, such as your father? But what do you think that even just people who are just listening, what do you think that for any men out there, what kind of relationships do they you think? And Bria, I guess you get a little bit of time to think about your answer for that. Um,
okay. I would say something would be like never settling for what, like, anyone you that doesn't deserve you, basically. Like, yeah. You want me to give more?
yeah, come on, come on,
Um,
yes. This is your chance. This is your moment. You got the
you've
mic.
been telling me not to, never get on the back of a motorcycle. So yeah, that
Okay.
because guys like to show off and things like that. So yeah, I would never do that anyway. Um, just think like thoroughly about, who it is you would be wanting to spend the future, like your future with. Like just, making sure that they're your person and not just like, yeah, because a few moments are good. Don't, just back to into settling, like don't settle into, the comfort level or things like that. Yeah.
Okay. That's very good. And Bria, what about you? What What are some things you think about relationships that you think daughters should hear directly from their fathers?
Advice of what was it? Basically, advice of getting to know the person very well before you commit to them, and included in that getting to know them is that whole, you should please. I feel like you've always told me you should, wait until you see somebody in every season, in all of those seasons and different reactions, different scenarios, getting to know their families. I feel like it's huge. How do they interact with the people in their life? How do they love the other people in their life? Because 9 times out of 10, they will also be showing up for you in a similar way. So I feel like that's one of the hugest takeaways of the relationship that I feel like daughters should be getting from their dad.
I just want to say this, everyone. No, like see, I should be taking. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying.
And it's
Yeah, but dad is very short with me about
About what relationships or
we just now like I'm
well,
saying
yeah,
we
because you're
just
just 20, you're just getting
that's what
into
I'm saying. So
relationships.
don't
Yeah, so,
start with me, start with
yeah, I
Bree.
probably should have started with Bree in that regard.
Yeah, I don't like being the tone setter for questions. I
Okay,
don't
so
can't
I should
really,
have asked Bree first, and
yeah.
then
Yeah.
came around to you. Okay,
Yeah.
well, she was already talking, um, so here's one that you can answer because right now this is very interesting for me as a father and a dad, and we're kind of talking just it's kind of here, and I guess you're right to the sense that at 20 you're kind of really just getting into the relationship stuff. You know what I mean? Like real relationship. It's very difficult for anyone who has the kids, especially your youngest is always weird, especially when it's your daughter and they're dating and they're dating guys and guys are just do dumb stuff in their 20s. They're just not mature and they're just not they just do dumb stuff. So every dad worries about their kids and then they worry about the karma also that might have happened. But so yeah, so you think about that as a dad, and we just you're kind of like just getting into this. I mean, a lot of your world was centered around sports and that, but now that you're kind of going into, like I said, this kind of like second quarter of your life, is time for us to have conversations like that, which we did. So,
Yeah.
um, but you know what? I'll ask you a question I know you can answer. And how do you think that your experiences really even in sports that have kind of helped impact your communication like in relationships, or has it, in your opinion?
Um, no, Dad. Really, like all these questions with the sports, I don't think
You don't think it
really,
relates?
I don't think they relate because I was already a communicator. Like I'm just like, I would say yes, it's helped, but I would say I can't really keep basing these questions off sports because that's why I keep going into these tangents of like other things because it's just not
Right,
solely that.
so you want me to not talk about
Yeah,
sports at
no,
all? So
yeah.
no sports.
So
Okay, we're
not
not going to bring
not that not at all, but I would like it.
no sports analogies is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say my communicating was enhanced from sports, of course, because you have to be a team player to play any sport. Period. You have to work with your team and build a team, and then obviously, like being a point guard, I'm the second hand of a coach. So my communication has to be, you know, 10 times better than, someone who's not a point guard, period. I just have to I have to set the tone every day. Like even my coach now in college is like, you can't have a bad day. Like you can't. Like it's like obviously you can make mistakes, but it's like
Right.
more so like lock in. Like you're here every day and you have to set the tone every day because that's your role. And I know that. And that's not, I wouldn't say pressure because I don't really feel pressure, but it's just like the standard for what it takes to be a successful team. Your point guard has to be, the main communicator, the main reporter, the main report back to, the
So,
coach when things happen and things are not working. And then in life, I would say I've always been good at that. But I would say, I guess sports um definitely gave me the confidence. Um what is that
I
sound?
don't know what that sound is either. Okay.
So yeah, sorry we're a little distracted here. But yeah, I would just say
So all of that, you don't think any of that
I
relates?
think there's a mixture of things, not only how I was raised, but other than basketball, I did JRTC,
Okay.
um, which is a junior recruiter officer and training corporation or something,
Okay.
something, core.
Okay.
So yes, if anyone who's wondering what that is, I did that for like 2 years in high school. And all these things kind of just molded me into who I am and how I communicate, basically.
So, Ria, you also did sports. We're gonna stay away from the sports analogies
Yeah,
here,
because
as per
I just feel like I just want to say this. I was a natural born leader, so I feel like
guess what?
sports didn't bring that out for me. I literally came in and stepped into that. I've always like even if I wasn't the point guard, I was
So
still like
sometimes things help sharpen things that are already there, give you a way to use a
not
tool that you already
basketball.
have. Hmm? All right. So listen,
Basketball.
if you were cooking, right? If you had the innate ability to cook,
Yeah.
okay, and then you get out there and get in the kitchen, and you start making stuff, you're just going to get better using a skill that you might innately be good at.
Yeah.
So thus you become
Of course.
better
Yeah.
because you're kind of have a way to hone something
Yeah.
that may have been good. Sometimes we don't even know whatever, but um Bria,
But yeah. Okay. Yeah.
no, go ahead. What were we going to say
Because
before we
the
go to Bria?
question was, if I'm not mistaken, how has basketball played a crucial role in my communication skills? Right.
Yeah, or just I just was as do you think it has had an impact on it?
Oh, yeah.
That was the question. So you could have just said, yeah, I think so
So
because
when
I
you ask questions, you kind of keep going, so it's hard to understand to what level or
okay.
degree
So
you want me
I'll
to stop.
all right.
Sorry.
All right. Bria, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So let's talk about your kind of like uh, so here's the question I do want to ask for you and um what advice would you want, I guess, coming from me as a father when it comes to choosing the kind of the right partner, the right person for you?
Can you say that again? What advice would I like from who?
Yeah, your question.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's not a long question. This is a question. I said, like, what advice would you want when it comes to choosing the right person, the right partner? How about is that short enough for you? Jeez, these kids
What
these
is
days.
bring the right part?
Yeah, like is there anything that well, I mean, it's kind of I
I'd
guess
say
after the
from me
fact.
that yeah.
Uh, um, did you understand the question, Bree? A little bit.
What advice do you want from dad about choosing the right partner?
Okay. What I will say is that I have been finding it extremely eye-opening and interesting to have adult conversations with you guys when it comes to relationships. I have pretty much learned that humans speak an entirely different language.
Of
And
course.
You
it's
speak the
like
best language.
pretty complicated.
Mhm.
Like we have been able to have those kind of conversations. Lately where it's like outside of the realms of dad and daughter and more so into the realms of woman and man and just specifically the relationship and the difference between men and women. So I think like learning more about just continuing to have conversations, learning more about the mindset of men and kind of like better ways to approach certain situations and things of that nature. It's very helpful because we as women, are naturally emotional creatures. Even those who aren't super emotional, we're still emotional. It's just how God created us.
Right.
And so just the differences, learning to appreciate the differences and learning how to navigate those differences essentially.
Well, you know what? We also had, I guess, a good conversation, kind of surrounding about that. And I think it's interesting that I think the analogy I think about when I ever talk to women, even as I mentioned to you last week, I think I was saying to you that people go through, and Samiyah, this goes, people will go through, like, if you're wanting to get into the medical field, and people want to be a doctor, they go to 8, 10 years of school, become a doctor, become a good surgeon or whatever they're going to be in that field or whatever their career is. A lot of times you're going through 4 years of school and then you go into all this other stuff. But a lot of people want successful relationships and they don't spend that same kind of time understanding the opposite sex, or the men or women. Men should be understanding women, women should understand men, and I don't think people put enough time into that and really thinking about the fact that men, yes, we're very logical, so things have to make sense for us, and that sometimes means is we're not channeling how we feel about stuff. For women, it's always what you feel and how you feel, and there creates a disconnect because we're not always thinking about how we feel. We're thinking about how things make sense. Things have to make sense. Um, and so sometimes it takes a while for us to learn how to even articulate what we feel. And I'll say every time I kind of talk about some of the things, the dynamics between men and women, I think about when my youngest son Kasim was going to middle school, and I remember dropping him off or watching him at the bus stop, and I'm watching this i- interesting experiment where, the girls are all in a cluster talking together, and the guys are one's here, one's there, one's there. They're all by themselves. You know what I mean? And in middle school, and that kind of starts there. So it's that communication piece. I think women do learn to talk, to communicate and talk. Again, talk about their feelings, talk about, you know, what that person was wearing, whatever. But the guys, we just don't talk like that generally. You know what I mean? So it takes a while for a guy to learn how to even articulate what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and feel safe enough to even do that. You know what I mean? So I think it's important for women to understand that kind of a thing about men, and it's hard for a man to want to feel vulnerable enough to share what they're thinking, especially what they're feeling. So that's so it's about. I think it's important for women to create the environment for them, a man, to feel safe, to feel vulnerable, because again, as hard as men as we are or whatever, but I think it's important for women to understand the male ego is fragile. You know what I mean? It's all that behind all that bravado is, no man wants to hear anything negative, especially from a person that they're involved with or anything like that. But I think I see so many women just be negative and say negative things to men. It's just funny, the interesting thing about that. And I think it's very, very important to talk about, or to in order to bring out the things that you want. I think we just kind of had a brief conversation, you and I, about this yesterday. I think what's important for women to do is to talk about the qualities that they want to see more of, um, the positive things that they see. People, it's positive reinforcement. So, um, do you feel like? And I'll start with. Actually, I'll start with her and come back to you. How about that? Is that? So, are you ready for? You ready for that one now? Okay, she's ready for that one. Okay, she's ready. So, I was going to ask you, do you feel like you do that in your relationship right now? Do you feel like you um, model that kind of thing where you're saying, you kind of
Like
encouraging positive things
like
that you see?
acknowledging.
Yep, that. Yep.
Yes, I feel like I do that mm, very well for the most part, because
me and like my person, we, talk things out and like always make sure like we're on the same page or like just, check in and acknowledge both like each other. Like it's a mutual thing, like very mutual, in that regard. So yeah, definitely, has been healthy for us.
Skip that question.
No, guess what? You don't get to skip it this
Yeah,
time.
Bree.
No, come on, you gotta tell us. And if it's an area you're working on, talk about that.
Recently realized how unsafe of a space I was providing. It's really difficult to recognize it when you're thinking about your own feelings and what you're going through and just your own experience versus what someone else's experience is. So I feel like I am now in the space where I am trying to actively be conscious in my tone of voice and the things I say and how I say them, timing and all of that, where it wasn't really, fully focused on that there too.
Hey, you know what? I want to say something quickly about timing. You just mentioned that word, and I think the most hilarious thing to me is I think women, when they go through stuff, they want to deal with it right then and there, and the timing is also always not the best time to go through something, Um, and you're smiling, so yes, well, there's a winner.
Think, well, it depends on the woman. Like if, the woman is more like like me personally, I can speak from my personal experience. Like I'm more like reserved and like rather process my feelings or like, come to terms with what I'm feeling before I express it. So I feel like I'm just not that way.
And what about you, Bree?
Say that again.
Are you in the moment? Something happens, and you're in the moment, and you were just saying about the timing and
Dad was saying how like some women, react right there, right then and there in the moment, like when things happen.
Oh
And I
yeah.
was saying,
you said that's
oh, there it goes.
okay. Mm.
Right to this. That's
You said radioactive or
Yeah,
I said, did you
the
say
total opposite.
radioactive, Bree? I thought I heard that word. No, you can't hear me. Okay. So here's my okay, and here's what I'll say. And this is something I know I've shared with you. Samia, you don't have any kids, and I want you to take your time in that department. But one thing you learn when you have kids is that's also something you never should. It's never a good idea to punish your kids when you're angry because you're 9 times out of 10 you're gonna you may say something or do something that you regret later. So it's good to take a time out yourself, walk away from the situation, let things cool down, think about it, and then address it. So timing, and I think, like I said, I think some people do interact or enact that with their kids, but they don't bring that into their relationship. And I think the important thing about that is it's important to do that because if when you do, there's a saying that when you stop to think, you think to stop, or when you did I did I say it backward? When you think to stop, you stop to think, or one of those two ways. Anyway, it's kind of late here right now, but um, so give yourself a little time and just not reacting right away gives you some time to think about your response, how you're going to respond. But more importantly, here's what I guess the barometer I use myself because we it's very easy the way our eyes look outward, so it's very easy to see it's someone else's fault and than our own. And so for me, the what I use in my current relationship, and I'm fortunate and blessed. I don't have a lot of time. I don't get have to exercise this a lot, but in the past I have. But instead of thinking about the faults that other person has, you kind of filter it through your faults. You know what I mean? Because when you start thinking about the stuff that you do, or the stuff that the imperfections that you have, it helps you to accept, the imperfections other people have. And so I think we hold other people to a higher standard than we hold ourselves to, and that's not great, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's part of a big thing, and I think that's something that's a very humbling thing when you're actually real with yourself and you think about the things. But it's a relationship preserver because it's sometimes easy to judge someone else's shortcomings, but we would not want somebody else to judge our shortcomings. We want to pass, we want mercy, or we want some grace. That's the better word. But we're not always willing to give grace or extend grace to other people. So if you're a person out there and you're wanting grace, you're wanting, hey, I'm having a bad day, and so give me a break, but you don't give anybody else a break, that's something to think about. It's like a an area of opportunity, I would say.
Yeah.
So Bria, let me ask you this: like, what is the thing you think that is the most important thing for you as a woman to work on in your relationship to kind of help it to be better, or to keep it going, or to uh, what's I guess what do you see as like an area of opportunity
For myself,
for yourself? Yep.
as a
Or just you. Well, as a partner, as a not a mom. I'm talking about as a partner, as a relationship.
partner, I mean, speaking on my area of opportunity is mostly with just not being emotionally reactive to things. I do feel like I'm a very understanding person, um, and all of I feel like my communication is really good, sometimes too well. But so maybe like I'm not over communicating. Everything doesn't need to be stated. Every emotion, every feeling, every thought doesn't need to be communicated. And I think that's where my opportunities lie.
That's good introspection. I don't know about you, Samia. What are you thinking? Something I know you're kind of young at this thing where you know, but what are some of the things that you kind of think about? You know what, I could probably get better in that area, or get strong in that area, or want to get strong in that area. I
I
know
would
you're kind
say
of young.
just like voicing the things like when I'm asked like what do I like or gifting. When it comes to gifting, my name. I'm usually the gifter. It's in my name. My name actually means the talented and helpful gifter. So I'm just not used to like receiving things in turn. Like I don't even ask on parents half the time for like money unless I really need it, like cash or whatever. But
I love that, by the way.
but yeah, so like I'm just so from my partner, I'm like, nah. So I always just like lean away from that. And I've learned, my dad has helped me learn
Wow.
that, it's important for a man to feel like they're doing something, like good and like just gifting, like in general, like it just really satisfies them in a way that makes them feel like they're doing something, out of their heart and just as a man, like it just makes them feel more of a man when they can provide that type of what do you call it? Treatment.
Mhm.
And so I realized that I have to voice the things that I like more and really just give my person more descriptive things and not just be like bland or like broad with categories. I need to be more specific in the things that I like so they can really learn what I like and
Mhm.
be able to feel that satisfaction
How about
or that fulfillment.
does that make sense to you too, Bree?
You said what? Does that what?
I was wondering if that makes sense to you as well. What Samia just said.
What she said?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, as far as, feeling like she has to adapt to receiving gifts because she's usually the giver.
Or just kind of how sometimes we can be so I guess selfless. We kind of are used to giving to other people that we don't think about ourselves or the things that we need. Um, and I think that that's also important for, well, I think one of the things I was sharing with you about that is that I don't know if you heard that part of the conversation. She was saying that she's, even when she's asked, by the person she's in a relationship, who, things that they, what does she want for something? And she doesn't always articulate that because she doesn't really want to ask for things. And what I was explaining to her, we were talking about this yesterday, was that, the importance, if you kind of or it's just this thing that we're always teaching people how to treat us, and so if you get in the habit of not asking for things, or getting that person in the habit of never doing things for you, after a while you've been conditioned to not do things for you, but now you're expecting them to do stuff for you. Now you're mad at them because they're not doing anything for you, but you trained them to not do anything for you. So it's a funny thing,
And when you put it like that, it like really made me think like, whoa, you're right.
yeah. So
You're right.
a lot of times, and Bree, you could kind of chime in on this. A lot of times we're in a relationship. I'll say two things about relationships. And for one, I'll say this, that we're in the relationship that we think we're in. And I'm going to repeat that. We're in exactly the relationship you think you're in. So there's some people I've watched from afar, and they're in a really, really good relationship, but they don't think that they're in a good relationship. So they're upset, they're angry, they don't even realize that they're in a good relationship. And I know some people who are getting taken advantage of, and they're not in a great relationship, but they think that they're in a good relationship. So both of these people are right. And so they act differently. You could have a person doing all these things for you, but you don't see it because you're just seeing the things that you're not getting. And so many people are in 80-20 relationships, and they focus on the 20% that they're not getting as opposed to the 80% that they are getting. And Bria, you and I had the very introspective conversation about 2 years ago, and we talked about the emotions. What do they say about emotions, Brie?
When we talked about what?
Emotions, what they are. What are emotions? Sadness and
Oh,
happiness.
yeah, yeah, choices. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, choices. There are choices. Emotions are choice
It's a
decisions.
decision. Yeah, we decide happiness and sadness. I feel like, and so what I'll say for people who've never heard me say this before is this: I feel like happiness and sadness, and I'm saying this to you also. They're decisions. They're not emotions. Um, so we get to decide. We don't get to decide what happens to us, but we do get to decide how we're going to respond to things, that are happening. And so I think it's important to put things through that lens, of expectation, and it just helps to, you know, um, filter things through that way, I believe. So, so Bria, that's also something, especially for you, is to think about, hey, I, is to think about, well, I didn't mean to sing for you, especially, but I'm just saying, I'll take that back. But it's just to think about the relationship they want. And honestly, like I said, happiness or sadness, it's not always about. Now, I was also say this, that I don't think that there's any. Uh, we get really close to everything, having everything in a person, but I think that's also a false expectation. So as you're kind of getting out there, to me, into the world, and it's like, sometimes and I think TV and all this other stuff has puts a lot of pressure on people to expect perfection from somebody, and for somebody to kind of meet every need you could possibly have, and it's just not realistic. So my philosophy is the best way to avoid disappointment is to adjust your expectations. Not that you lower them to a point where they're just, but you have to adjust them. And so you adjust what you expect. And so that you don't get disappointed as often, and more importantly, you look at yourself first before you look at the other person and what they're not doing, what they're not bringing, because I think that alone is a humbling situation that just could save a lot of relationships. You just, you know, think about, what are you doing? What have you been giving? You're about to complain about this with that person, and what are your shortcomings? If you kind of filter that stuff through, it's humbling. You know, I believe so, personally. Bree, you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. 100%. And I'm sorry, it's a little difficult to hear you guys. So I'm trying to like laser listen.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
Like when you were a kid, right? I said, like when you were a kid, right? Never mind.
when I'm
You were. I'm saying, like, when you were a kid. I know I'm saying that. I'm encouraging that. I'm giving you a layup. But okay, listen. See, there you go. That getting angry at me. No, I'm kidding. But no, I deserve that one. But uh, so what I what I do want to do is I do want to kind of wrap the session. I appreciate you coming out, and Bree, I appreciate you calling in and just talking. And I kind of wanted to just do a little something. Just kind of want to further the conversation. Ironic that in the same weekend, you and I were talking yesterday, and Bria, you and I were talking last week, and we got on the same kind of subject. And I think it's important. I would like to have more of those conversations. Uh, I think Jabri and I talk a little bit more, but again, Samia, you're just getting to that age where there's no reason to talk to you about this stuff 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But now there is. And I think you're lucky right now. I think you're in a pretty good relationship, and I hope that continues because and just know that um, here's one thing as we're kind of winding up this show, and I'll ask you guys both so you get some time to think about what's your like one piece of advice that you carry with you for the rest of the life. And I two things I go, so I don't get one. I'm going to get two. Um, my first, I want to talk about what I feel like a successful life is, and that's one with no regrets. So if you kind of uh, use that even in your relationship, is I think so many people will kind of get into, and you and I kind of were mentioning this yesterday. Or I was kind of mentioning this briefly to you yesterday. Is that sometimes in relationships people will get hurt, and sometimes most people give the right thing to the wrong person. So when the right person comes along, they've already been hurt by somebody, and so now they're holding back all this stuff, and then that relationship doesn't go the way it's supposed to go because that person's not getting everything that you gave the wrong guy. So the best thing, and what I said to you yesterday, is to be consistent. Show up consistently. The relationships are going to change, but you shouldn't change. You should be consistent in your percentage of what you give out, regardless. You don't make that other person pay for something somebody else did, and most people do that. Many people do that in relationships. I did have another thing, and I don't know what that I don't remember because I went from that tangent there. Um, but I'll ask both of you, and I don't know if you want to go next, me, or you want Bria to go now, or
Yeah, I don't mind.
you ready? Okay, and Bria, I guess you get a little bit more time. But so the question again is like one piece of advice. Uh, kind of like I guess the question was more like uh. Well, I guess maybe you're too young to give relationship advice right now, but you said no.
No.
Okay, what is your best relationship advice?
Um, my best relationship advice in this day and age would be like don't be selfish. Like you can't like hold on to something like you said. I don't know if you mentioned it earlier or we talked about it yesterday, but you can't hold on to a situation that happened when your partner doesn't know that they did something wrong. Like it has to be addressed practically in the moment or, in the near future so that things don't blow up and potentially turn into something bigger. So I would say, just be transparent and like vulnerable enough, especially if, you want the relationship to last. I would say that transparency is key to like you progressing as a unit for sure.
I think that's great advice. How about you, Bree? What's the one relationship advice that you would give to other people in relationships? Women, men. You probably can give both. Why don't you give one for both, Bree? Like, what advice would you give to what advice would you give to men in relationships, and one for women? I could have probably took that same question too, but
To who?
so if you were giving what one piece of advice would you give to men in relationships and one to women? So you get to answer both.
And my advice to me was to do your best to listen, right? Like, and not just, I mean, to understand versus just listen, right? Like to understand what it is you're listening to, because I feel like that's often a huge disconnect
Hmm.
with men and women. Men are really solution based and just want to fix things, and women, you know, sometimes just want their feelings acknowledged. but and not for them to fix something, and men tend to not understand that.
And you know what? Can I piggyback on that? Where
But
you
if
think
you
about the
listen,
second part of that, and I think you said listen, and I almost think the word should be heard than listen, because listen, you can just hear, you can listen to anything and not really hear something. You know what I mean? Like to me,
well,
yeah. You know, and I'm actually kind of taking, I'm agreeing with you 150%, and just kind of taking it a little further, and you can listen to something but not hear it. You know what I mean? And there's the difference, and sometimes explaining that to that other person, hey, you know, I know you listened to what I said, but did you really hear me? And I'll piggyback on how something that I learned as a man to acknowledge women's feelings in that regard was you should restate the the concern, and saying, listen, I understand that, you know, or I heard that you said XYZ. So if we're able to restate what we heard you say, it helps you feel heard. Would you agree with that? As opposed to just listening and not responding, which is what a lot of men do, just is listen and not respond. And a lot of times, if you're getting talked at, it's even more so. You know, you're restraining yourself and you're not really hearing that person. You're just listening to them just go off. But if, as a man, you can reiterate or say, repeat what was just said, then I think, or you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think a woman feels heard in that instance. Does that sound
yeah,
accurate? Yeah. So that's my little man advice. Now, go ahead and give your advice to women, Bree.
well, my advice to women would be to just keep doing what you're doing. Like,
Yeah, keep doing that.
So yeah. Oh, that is funny.
Listen to men. Listen to. Follow direction. What is it? Be obedient. You said.
yeah, because men aren't very verbal, but if you pay attention to them, you can, there's a lot of information there. Paying attention to their body language, their tone, their movements, their tone, all just the small details. I feel like there's a lot of information there that we don't pay attention to sometimes.
All right.
Get so upset that they won't tell us what's going on when they've been showing us the whole time and we just haven't been seeing it.
Right. And then things get petty. Don't be petty.
Yeah, there you go.
That stuff is a beast.
Tit for tat stuff just never.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and so, but no, I think that also is really good. Bree, is just kind of paying attention or just kind of observing. Um, and I think it's important to pay attention to the things that people don't say more than the things that they do say. You know, because we're always, more most people are guarded with what they're going to actually say, but it's hard to hide your emotions or your reactions or how people react to things. And being a person who's good at listening to body language or watching or paying attention to how somebody responds to certain things. You know, so if you're yelling at someone and they're responding with a smile, then yeah, maybe that's something you want to encourage. But if they're not, they shrink into a shell. And a guy who doesn't talk, and once they do try to say something, I tell you what, I've been in these situations where you do try to eke out a little bit of something because you put your toe in the water, and then a woman just chews your head off for or says something crazy. And you know what is funny? Samia and I was talking, Brie, about watching that movie Forever, that show Forever. Did you watch that yet?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so it's that kind of like I watched so many instances in that show, the series, that he's kind of being vulnerable, at times, and it just didn't go. The thing about the college thing or whatever, just sometimes guys are just looking for a moment to just try to get something, and something they can build on, or just kind of like I said, is vulnerability. It's hard for a man to be that, and when you can find that, uh, you guard it, or you don't trample on it. That's something I think is super super important, because you won't get it again. You know what I mean? You won't get a guy. A guy will not keep opening up if he opens up and you just shut him down or say, "Oh, that's stupid," or "That's nobody thinks like that," or everything. Guess what? You don't ever. They never open up again. You know. So again, I think those are all things that just come with growing a relationship. You know, and just I think men like to be heard too, just as much as women like to be heard. We just don't say as much, you know. Uh, but I know that I had to learn how to communicate um, because I wasn't a good communicator in the beginning of, in my 20s, my early 20s. I was not. I had to learn how to do that. And like I said, that experiment I talked about in middle school for guys, we don't have the same, we don't get as much uh, experience or practice at it as women do generally, you know. Um, so we have to learn how to communicate, how to talk, how to trust, how to, if you want a guy to open up, you just want to keep, encouraging that by just making them feel heard and not shooting down the things that they're saying, even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't like it or whatever, but just, they're testing things out and just seeing. And, so anyway, that was I mean we could go on and talk about this. It is a little later than normal, but
We gotta run this back when
when
I
you're
got some more energy.
yeah, and I'm so sorry. So we will probably do that. And Bria, would you be interested in doing that again, kind of coming back, or just us talking about this again, or going further into?
Really hard to be
So
like
you're gonna come to Atlanta next time?
maintained. You know, like it can really help maintain the fluidity.
Yeah, I got
It's
you.
so hard to hear.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, hear this. We're gonna end the show right now. And so, hopefully, like I said, it's a little different kind of podcast. I wanted to kind of talk to my daughters. It's a Father's Day weekend, or it's actually a little after Father's Day. But just give some, feedback. And so, if you kind of got anything out of this feedback or anything, maybe if the music is too loud, that's going on. Thank you. Yes, there we go. All right, then make sure you subscribe, follow, and keep the conversation going. And say until next time, make sure you stay sharp, stay focused, and always mind your business.